Welcome to another episode of Bridges in Tech, a podcast dedicated to sharing the stories of women of color, learn about their projects, and see how we can collectively increase representation of women of color in tech. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with a recruiter, and I have been dying to get one on this show for a while now, so I am so excited and I cannot wait for you to learn all about how recruiting works at Facebook specifically, and learn a little bit more about Gabrielle. Gabrielle is the recruiter I will be chatting with. Let's get into it. Thank you, Gabrielle, for coming on the show today and being willing to share your knowledge with our audience. I am so excited. I know that this is going to be fun. So welcome to the show. And
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, could you just introduce yourself to our audience real quick?
Definitely, yeah. So my name is Gabrielle Williams. I'm currently a technical sourcer at Facebook. I do focus on recruiting for our consumer-facing product org. Now, I've only been there for about 7 months now, but I come from a background of recruiting at agency before, where I was doing that for a bit over 2 years. And so a lot of my focus just, in recruiting really, is helping people honestly land a job, doing interview prep, making sure that they're prepared for what's to come, and really just helping out from that perspective of things. And, while equally helping out our hiring managers, in terms of them finding the best people for their roles.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So how did you get into recruiting?
Yeah, so I actually fell into recruiting. Probably like a lot of people, we always kind of joke about that sometimes. It's just like recruiting is like, there's no major for it in school. There's no path for recruiting. It's, it's one of those things, honestly, you just kind of fall into. And so when I moved to Chicago in 2017, I actually had no idea what recruiting was. First off, I was just applying to all different kinds of jobs. And then randomly one day I get a call from a recruiter at my previous employer, Real Staffing, who just reached out and was like, "Hey, I came across your resume at Career Builder, wanted to chat about recruiting." And I was like, "Okay, what's recruiting? Like, I don't understand." And I think she had to explain it to me like 3 times. And I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get it, but I'm still a little confused on what I'm doing. Like, who am I finding people for? I was so confused back then. I'm like, okay, like I was really starting to feel like, am I really this slow, or just like, do I not get it? And so finally understood that, first off, agency is very different than internal recruiting, which is what I'm doing now. So when I was working at agency, I was filling roles for pharmaceutical clients with contractors. So very, very different than what I'm doing now in terms of types of positions, but fell into recruiting that way. Honestly, just kind of came at me in terms of them reaching out to me directly, me going in, sitting down, having interviews and just really learning more about the process. I did a presentation on recruiting, so finally understood, what I was walking into. But yeah, so that's kind of how I found my way into recruiting, or I guess you could say it found me.
Yeah, it sounds like it found you.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I've always been curious how that works. And it's because back in my college days, I actually worked in HR
Okay.
for a little bit, and that was just something I fell into. And like you, I had no idea what it even meant.
Right.
I needed a job, so
Yep, exactly.
So so you've been at Facebook, you said 7 months.
Yep, you got it.
So how do you like recruiting for Facebook?
Yeah, recruiting for Facebook is honestly, it's much better than agency. It's honestly like a whole nother world, to be honest. I really enjoy it over agency, I would have to say. Having the opportunity to chat with like really creative, innovative people, since I do focus on the product side of things, is super interesting. So it's really cool to have the opportunity to learn about their backgrounds, like what a lot of people on product have been up to, and also kind of, be that first person that these people are chatting with at Facebook, so really being able to, tell them about our processes and how things work here has been great. It's been a good experience. I am technically maybe almost out of that quote unquote noob phase, but definitely still kind of feel like a noob here, not gonna lie. Pretty big company, lots of things. I'm always learning something new, always tackling different product roles in terms of, recruiting efforts. But yeah, it's been a good experience so far.
About how big is the team that you're recruiting for?
Wow. Yeah. So our product org, to my knowledge, has over 400 product managers. So
Oh,
it's a pretty huge org. Yeah. There's a lot of people, we're still actively hiring right now. As of now, I do support 5 different hiring managers. So
okay.
that's, yeah, from people who work on privacy infrastructure, messenger privacy, monetization, payments, kind of just whatever I get assigned to is, what I lean in and tackle. So,
Mhm.
yeah, there's, we're kind of broken up into different focuses for products. So my team does consumer facing. We have other teams that focus on like AR, VR and WhatsApp and enterprise PM roles. So we are pretty structured in that regards for our recruiting org as well.
Mhm. Would you say that the recruiting practice, though, is similar across all the different orgs within Facebook?
So honestly, I'm not 100% sure on that. So I don't really dip into many other recruiting orgs. The way that we work together is as much as just kind of, referring people to those roles that may not be a good fit for my role. But again, that's just been my experience thus far.
Okay.
So that's just kind of speaking from my personal experience.
Right, right. Okay. So how does it work? Let me see. And I'm gonna just ask you all kinds of questions because I've been dying to get a recruiter on the show.
No worries, you're
Just so
good.
I can like destroy them. No, I'm just kidding. I am not destroying anybody. So do you just sort of wait for people to apply for positions and then you go through like their resumes and that stuff, or do you also have to actively be on like social media and stuff like that and find people as well? Source
Yeah, that's a good
people.
question. Yeah, so since I am a technical sourcer, we do actively source for candidates.
Okay.
So I am pretty active at going on LinkedIn. We have an internal tool that we use where we house all our candidates. So, I search through that as well, but it is an active sourcing,
Okay.
um, you know, day to day that we do as technical sourcers and recruiters as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, as people apply to positions, we have access to go through those candidates as well. So it's really kind of doing both,
Okay.
going through people who apply, going through just sourcing people on LinkedIn, looking at people who match the requirements and qualifications that we look for. And
Hmm.
then the third part of it would be referrals. So people at Facebook, whatever org they may be in, are always referring people in.
Hmm.
And so they go straight to our referrals team first, and then they send them over to like a technical recruiter or sourcer, and where we, have the opportunity to view the profile and chat with the referrals as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So what makes a candidate stand out to you when as you're going through this different places that you're looking at candidates?
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna say that's it's a bit of a hard thing to answer. And
It
reason
is.
is because so many different hiring managers, they have different qualifications and requirements, so what I'm looking for does change.
Mhm.
Now, from a general perspective, when I, recruit for consumer facing product managers through our generalist or unallocated path here at Facebook, I'm really just looking for strong product managers. And I know that sounds so subjective, but just, people who have really good experiences, innovating products, taking them from ideation to launch, working through that entire space, ideally looking for, pretty senior product managers, at least right now is our focus. So, those people with anywhere from 5 to 6+ years of experience,
Mhm.
depending on the hiring manager and, what we're recruiting for. A lot of times I look for like startup experience
Okay.
or co-founder experience. Obviously in those situations, those people have such like a vast like experience,
Mhm.
because those people in startups often wear multiple hats. So they're, used to doing lots of things, and they're really building the product from the ground up.
Okay.
They're not oftentimes just doing like adding features or doing implementations. They're literally building the products. So a lot of times that's something that stands out as well. But I would say as a whole, just really in the product org, we look for people who are really creative, scrappy, and innovative, and can really just set a team up for success.
Awesome. Okay. And you can, and you're sort of telling all of that from your either resume or social media profile. I'm not even sure, wherever you found them. You can kind of learn those things from their personality and what they do.
Definitely. And, we always have a pre-screen with candidates before, we push them through our process, which I'm sure most companies do, which I think is a really important piece of the puzzle because, of course, you can put out a lot of things on paper, but sometimes, not everyone has things on papers. And then when you get to the conversation, you're like, oh, wow, like you've done a lot more, than you even have written down. So I always really value those pre-screen calls because I'm really able to dive deeper into like what this person's not only responsibilities have been, but what their impact has been, at whatever company they've been working with.
Gotcha. Yeah. But first, though, they have to, their profile or their resume had to have caught your eye to
Definitely.
even get to that level.
No, yeah, definitely. And I think that, a lot of us here, honestly, sometimes I'm not super picky. I'm really open to have conversations with really anyone in product, just to kind of see like what your experience has been as a candidate. Again, I try to help people with their resumes too, as much as I can, like I said, because sometimes, it's not always presented on their resume how they presented in the call. So that's another important piece of the puzzle is, helping people really update their profile from that perspective too.
I love that. So I want to look at the other side of this. So a lot of people that would talk about tech, they're like tech recruiting. I talked to this recruiter and the recruiter didn't quite even understand what I do or what the position does. And we're like not on the same page. Like, why don't those recruiters know what jobs they're recruiting for and stuff like that? I know it's a struggle, right? Because you aren't actually the hiring manager.
Right.
You are just talking to the candidates using information that the hiring manager provided you. So they didn't give you all the information. Like there is not much that you can do. But how do you try to bridge that gap with getting a true understanding of what your hiring manager is looking for so that you can look for that in a candidate for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times in my experiences, not even just at Facebook, but just in recruiting in general, I think it's really important for the recruiter to spend time with their manager, asking their manager questions about the role that candidates tend to ask, to make sure that we do have as much information as possible. Now, as recruiters, of course, like you said, we're not the hiring managers, but nor are we in that role that we're recruiting for, so I'm not a product manager, so I can't speak, entirely about the day-to-day. I can give you an overview based on the information that I've been given and kind of studied up on, things like that. So that's something that I can do. But I think what's really important is just to have a meeting with the team that you're hiring for and really just ask them to outline what this person is going to be doing, what their impact's going to be, what their focus is going to be, kind of like what the kind of like goal and vision is for that team, what are they going to be working towards. I think it's just important to really have those conversations. And in my experience specifically at Facebook, managers are really open to having those chats just so that way we have a full understanding of one, what are we looking for in a profile, but also two, like how can I explain this role to a candidate enough to where they understand, what they're going to be working on. Now, something that we do as well is, if a candidate tends to have lots more questions or, they're really just wanting to chat with the manager head on, we can set up exploratory calls with hiring managers. So that way they can just kind of, get some more insight there. Now, exploratory calls can be tricky, because obviously everyone's schedule is really tight.
Mm-hmm.
So typically in those cases, we really try to, at least, and again, this is just specifically my experience with my org, we really try to set those up after they pass our first round of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes we can, navigate it beforehand. Again, just oftentimes depends on availability. But that's definitely something we, want to work towards, so that way candidates can have that deeper understanding of, is this role a good fit for me?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's like really, really good points. And that's good that you're able to do that like exploratory interview with a
Mm-hmm.
hiring manager, because they would definitely have some more answers to questions. So from a recruiter's point of view, what is product management?
Do you mean from Facebook specifically? Like, what do we look for in our product managers, or what do you mean, just so I can make sure I answer that?
Um, let's just do Facebook then. Yeah, because it's sort of different from for other places, so
Mm-hmm.
we can stay focused.
Yeah, so at Facebook, and again, I'm just going to talk about consumer facing product management because that's what I focus on specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So here at Facebook, I really refer to all of our product managers as like mini CEOs. And the reason I say that is because they really are like in charge of their product area. We have many different product groups. So like here at Facebook, you're usually a product manager in a specific domain, like whether that's ads, growth, messenger, anything else that kind of falls under Facebook app or Instagram, for example, would be like activation or notifications.
Okay.
So really here, you really own your product. You're really the person in charge. A lot of times our product managers here are leading, medium-sized teams of engineers. They're obviously working with not only engineers, but developers and data people and designers to really build and bring their product to life. And so that's really what a big focus is on the consumer facing side of things, finding and creating products in ambiguous areas, like what's something new that we can do at the same time, though, obviously, of course, a part of that is doing feature upgrades sometimes. So really just as a whole, you're owning a product, you're creating something new for users. And really, really, the emphasis in the consumer facing product org is creating products that are B2C, so anything that's going to be for the consumer specifically.
Got it. Okay. And so what makes a good product manager, you sort of talked about a little bit in your previous answer to another question, so I'm not going to recap that. Can you share some mistakes that you have seen candidates make when they apply for jobs, or any of the jobs that you've looked at your resume, or maybe you got with them on the phone and had that pre-screening call? What are some of the mistakes that you have noticed that maybe can help somebody?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I feel like for the most part, just in my experience, candidates tend to portray themselves quite well in a resume format. One thing I would say, at least for me and our org, like we're not very specific about like only sending over, 1-page resumes, for example. Like sometimes it may take a bit over a page, to list out all the different products that you've worked on. But in terms of like mistakes, I would say sometimes, now this is one that is interesting for me that I've actually been noticing pretty recently as well, is that some candidates on their LinkedIn, they don't really talk about what they do. So for example, under their experience, they might just say product manager at, let's say, Facebook or Microsoft, for example, at whatever company, but there's nothing written underneath it. So it's like, I don't know what you do at all. Like, yeah, you're a product manager, but what do you do as a product manager? You know what I mean?
Right.
So sometimes people don't portray that on their LinkedIn. Now, if that's the case, I don't think it's the end of the world. Honestly, like 9 times out of 10, we're still going to reach out. And then that's when we get to that call and are really able to understand, what your focus is and what you're doing.
Okay.
So that's why I really say that that first call is super important, because we're able to kind of dive deeper than just what's on paper. And so, again, this is an interesting question to answer because I don't really see people make too many mistakes. I would highlight, though, depending on the role that you're applying for, making sure that your resume aligns with that role. You know what I mean? Like, if I am applying to a product growth role versus a business analyst role, those resumes should look different. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be using the same resume for those differing positions. Like, I should have a resume that's tailored to each specific job. And I think that's something that people don't do very often, is change their resume to highlight where their experiences relate to the job that they're applying for specifically.
Because they use the same resume and to apply for 15 different types of jobs, but they are not. And I try to tell people that, because if the words, or even at a specific role, you probably did something that aligned better with this particular job, and that should sort of be the highlight, not the other highlight of, I filled out this paperwork 13 times a week. Well, are you going to be filling out paperwork at this other job?
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, it's important to draw out and highlight, where your skills relate, definitely.
That's a good point. I like, hopefully you guys are taking notes. Don't want to hear complaints later. So let's talk a little bit more about, I know I've been hammering you about, oh no, I have one more recruiting question. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So some recruiters would ask, like, how much are you looking for? What is your price, or how much do you make now? However way they choose to ask that question. Are you offended or does it count negatively towards a candidate if they do not give their current salary?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are actually not allowed to ask that.
You do not. Okay, well, that's good.
So I do not ask that question. The way we're actually also kind of structured at Facebook in our recruiting org, so being a technical sourcer, I actually do not deal with compensation at all. So that's something that I don't work with my candidates. Now I just communicate that like that, just letting them know that that's something I don't work with. But after they pass the first round, that's when I transition them over to one of my recruiting counterparts. And now that counterpart is going to be the person who preps them for their final interview. And that's also going to be their contact all the way through the end of their process. So that's going to be the person that they'll be negotiating compensation with. Now, we don't directly ask what you're making, but oftentimes that info is provided to us in the sense of, here's what I'm looking for in my next position.
Correct.
So yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily like, oh, we're not going to consider you because you asked how much the comp is.
Right.
It's one of those things here at Facebook specifically that is handled later down the line. A big chunk of that is just because, we don't determine your level up front in my org. So it's really hard to give you a range of, compensation bands when we don't even know which level you're going to come in at. So that's something that we also tend to, handle on the really at the end of the process.
Awesome. That's good to know. Okay, I think I'm done with recruiting questions. So let's talk about you. So you are a partner in herbal wellness.
Hrblgy.
Yeah. How do you say the name of that company?
Yeah, it's Hrblgy.
Hrblgy. Okay.
Yep.
So you want to talk a little bit about that and what that does?
Yeah, so it's actually small business LLC. It's my partner's business, actually. She is an herbalist and an ethnobotanist, so really making products with a lot of different herbs. Our motto there is really heal self, heal others, of, bringing wellness back home and really just like highlighting different products in the wellness space, but mostly pertaining to herbs. And so she started the company based on her love for herbs, to be honest, and learning more about, the roots of
Mhm.
where all this medicine has came from in the past, which, as you know, came from a lot of people of color.
Mhm.
So really wanting to bring that out and highlight that. She does a lot of workshops, different herbal workshops, via VC right now, of course, but prior to in person, kind of leading events there. And we've actually just launched our first 2 products quite recently. So I really just help facilitating, like working on kind of the business side of things,
Mhm.
whether that's like logistics and shipping, also just helping out in terms of like packaging and all that good stuff is really where I help. And I kind of do whatever else she needs help with, to make things easier on her. But it really is her business. I'm really just kind of like a partner here, like supporting where I can. I recently finished my MBA, so a lot of the things I'm doing, I've learned in my program, which has been super helpful in terms of like running numbers and doing logistics and things like that.
That's awesome. So do you get to use some of the herbs?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, test some of them out for sure. So far we've launched a sacred soak and a sacred smoke blend. It's the sacred collection. And so made quite a few sales so far, which is pretty, cool given COVID, of course, but
Right.
really just trying to get things rolling. Eventually we're going to have essentially like a journal and an archive, which will also be available on the website, kind of also just in the really beginning processes of, getting writers to hop on board and write about, their different healing modalities or their experience just with healing in general.
Mhm.
So that's also still kind of on the horizon.
Awesome. That's so cool. I want to learn more about that.
Definitely.
And so you did some fundraising efforts for African Science Academy, and then you later went to Ghana,
Mhm.
volunteer. You want to talk a little bit
Yep.
about that experience? Curious.
Yeah. So at my last job, actually, our corporate social responsibility nonprofit was the African Science Academy, which is actually, based in Tema, Ghana, which is about an hour outside of Accra. And, we were doing a lot of different fundraising efforts for them where essentially the money would go towards scholarships for the girls in the program. So African Science Academy specifically for girls, just to mention that as well. And so I led efforts here stateside to really just kind of raise as much money as possible through different efforts in my last office. So most of our fundraising came from people that worked at our company, but not completely just that. Partnered with a few people in a few bars actually here in Chicago to hold fundraising, like, I don't want to say like karaoke nights, but where we would have like some local artists perform and people would buy tickets, and a lot of the bars would just give us a percentage of the proceeds.
Hmm.
So that was pretty cool. Did a lot of events like that. Did some like trivia nights where people would sign up and pay per their team and things like that. So kind of lots and lots of different events that I led, and had a really great team that was supporting me in that. And
Hmm.
then we had essentially, I would call it a competition almost, that I actually didn't know was a competition up front, where, or I guess I knew it was a competition. I didn't really know that there was a quote unquote like prize to it.
Okay.
Um, so we had a competition where all of our different offices globally, through my last company, and we had offices literally all around the world, where everyone basically signed up as a team and tried to raise as much money as possible in 1 month. So my team here in Chicago, we were able to raise $4,000 in that 1 month. And so myself and my other partners, who helped kind of lead things with me on the forefront, got the opportunity to go to Ghana because Chicago raised the most money.
Um,
So that was a really good experience too, to, head out to the school. These girls are super smart. They're a cohort. They do cohorts every year where these girls are from all different parts of Africa. So lots of students from Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, of course, but really just all over. And they come together to take really advanced classes in math and science.
mhm.
And so while we were there, just got to learn a little bit about each of their cultures, honestly, as well as, we shadow some of their classes. And we also did presentations on resumes in terms of how to make them. So all the girls already had rough drafts, but we took time and edited all of their resumes, as well as started helping them with their cover letters and really just their entry essays for college.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really good experience, helping in those regards, but definitely really cool experience that I'm happy to have able to, worked with, as well as just, I always keep an open hand to everything because they have my email. So I'm like, if you guys ever need anything in the future, definitely willing to help with resumes for future cohorts, as well as just, whatever they need to. So really awesome nonprofit.
Oh, that's great. That's really good that you did that and you got to experience, go meet the people that are getting the money. And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you like help do fundraisers or you donate to something, but you never truly see the
Right.
people that got it. So I feel like that was
Definitely.
cool.
Yeah, definitely full circle.
Yeah. And so some of your at least one of your aspirations is to work in business strategy or product management.
Yeah, so that's kind of a goal of mine after finishing my MBA here, which I finished a couple months ago
Oh,
now.
congratulations, class of
Thank you.
2020.
Yeah, not what we expected, but you know what?
Right?
I'll take my degree though.
Uh,
Yeah, so I'm not really 100% to be honest, and sure in what area I really want to go into, but product is really interesting to me. I like taking the aspects of creativity, putting it into a product, and having that impact among users.
mhm.
On the other side, though, I really do like strategy. So again, kind of that creative aspects of strategy as well, where you're coming up with different ideas, what's going to work for the business in terms of, helping it take that step forward. So I'm pretty open, right now. I've been taking the time to really network with people, understand, what they do in their positions, see what kind of, really warms my heart in terms of like, okay, this is what I want to do for my next step in my career.
Mhm. Got it. Well, I know that you're going to find your passion really, really soon. I think that's one of the really good ways
Hmm.
to connect. You connect with people, you learn about things that people are working on, um,
Definitely.
learn from the experiences, learn from, lessons that they've learned and all of
Right.
that. And then you can decide, okay, I definitely want to go into that or
Exactly.
absolutely not.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I feel like sometimes, first you find out what you don't want to do.
Yes, you always find that out first.
Right. Always.
You're like, I know I don't like this and this and this. Like, what do I like though?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you have some advice for, you know, women of color and people out there, women in general that are looking to start a career in tech or they're looking to advance. So, I'm going to start with those that are looking to start a career in tech. What are some of your advice for them?
Yeah, I think that, and this kind of goes to answer both questions, but I think networking is definitely a big piece of the puzzle. Just really in any job, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
Network, take the time to chat with people, and learn about different roles and see what skills you really need for those roles, and really take the time to hone in on those skills. You know what I mean? Like if a position requires SQL, like what can you do to learn SQL, for example? If you're looking for a more technical role, what skills do most people in those technical roles have, and how can you get that experience? I think it's also important to be open to like rotational programs and internships. Those can really set you up for success as well. Just, kind of getting that foot in the door and getting that experience.
Yeah. That's really good. And I think that is, in line with some of the things that other people that have come on this show have talked about. Like the big one is always the networking, like go network, meet with people, learn
Hmm.
from people. And I don't know how many times we're going to have to say it, but we're going to keep saying it. Just talk to people occasionally.
Definitely. Yep, for sure.
Um, Are there some final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share that I didn't cover?
Yeah, I just want to, emphasize, to people that like I'm open to having conversations, just in terms of talking about tech or recruiting or whatever it may be, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. However that may be. I people reach out to me all the time. Like, I'm really open to having conversations, really open to networking as well. Also just in terms of resume help, I have been helping a lot of my friends recently, in terms of layoffs and things like that, unfortunately, but restructure resumes to, really make sure that they're set up for success in when applying for positions. So I'm definitely open to kind of chatting in those regards as well. So again, just in general, I'm open to chatting. Feel free to connect, and just reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you offering that. I will include your LinkedIn link. That's very weird. uh, in,
Right.
in the description of the podcast. So please reach out to her for any recruiting or tech career that you may need, assistance that you may need. I may need to slide into your DM as well, but you never know. So
For sure.
but yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate you, and we look forward to chatting more in the future, working together.
Definitely. Yeah, I appreciate you for reaching out, and thanks for having me.